Sick. Hello, guys. Hello, Harry.
Thanks for having
Welcome
me.
to Dive in Wonder. Thank you so much for being here.
We've been trying to get this done for a while, so I'm happy.
It's been a while. I'm happy that you're here. I've really enjoyed picking your brain off camera, so I was just like, it's going to be very useful for people, I feel like, to pick your brain on camera.
Yeah, I think we both have very, very similar brains. We think about a lot.
A lot of shit.
Yeah. Almost. I think about a lot of pointless things too. I don't know about you, but...
Did you just say that I think about pointless things?
I said I do. I don't know if you do.
No, I do all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
Do you mind just giving a brief introduction of yourself to the divers?
I think I don't like saying it because it's what I do. It's not who I am, but a big part of what I do is I've been boxing since the age of 9 and went to 2 Olympic Games, travelled all over the world boxing, representing Australia and at some of the biggest events, and I think that's probably what I'm most known for. And it's been like a massive part of my story, but also as well like deeply curious person. I think a big key part to my story is my mum was a medium, so she talks to dead people, which is quite fascinating, and my dad is like super right wing, so like quite conservative, old fashioned.
Okay.
And I think growing up,
how did they meet? How did that?
It's a good question. I have no idea. I don't know how they're still together. Like they're still together. They love each other dearly.
They're gonna be the next guests.
Yeah, sit them down. They're not getting a divorce. But I think seeing them both grow up, like mum being left wing, dad being right wing, I don't think I really knew what was right, what was wrong when it comes to like, I guess, politics or any issue really, because mum and dad would often have debates or conversations with each other and they would have different opinions, and I saw flaws in both of them, but I also saw really positive things in both of my parents. So,
but was it like curious conversations or did it get heated?
I think naturally, like they've been married for what, 30, 40 years now, so it's like naturally sometimes of course it did get heated, but a lot of the time it was a lot of curious, beautiful conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I do think the world has lost. In a sense, I feel like the world has lost the ability to listen to someone who doesn't share the same opinion than you.
Yeah.
You know, I think we view them as like really negative people if they don't vote for this certain person, and I just don't see the world like that. I think there's a certain percentage of people that are actually evil people, which I think is quite small. I think a lot of people are just beautiful. Even if they don't share the same views as you, they care about similar things. They want their family, their friends, themselves to be happy, well off, and in good health. Like.
Agreed. Yeah. I think it's interesting that you saw that growing up, because I feel like it comes a lot from like fear. When you're scared of others' opinions, because you feel like if you're wrong, that means something about you. Yeah,
you attach yourself to beliefs. That's something that it sounds like you are too. Like we're on this like quest to find our answers to questions that we probably won't, like, I think about, like, what are we doing here?
I feel like our quest is more to detaching ourselves from beliefs. It ends up being more of like a who am I, but the whole who am I or what am I is just taking away shit, like cleaning up things that we've been given.
It's almost like we're told from a young age who we are, but it's a false representation of who we are.
That's what's so interesting, that you had both opinions. Did you feel like you were trying to go a specific direction to make one of them proud, or did you feel like they would just ask for your opinion and then just like let you go off?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because I think being the youngest, I'm the youngest of 3 boys, and I think my oldest brother naturally just got the harshest parents and probably the worst parents, because it was the first time doing it. They were like probably strangling because they didn't know.
I'm an only child.
Yeah, they didn't know how to handle it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it sort of just got more and more lenient, by the time it got to me. And I think by the time it got to me, my parents very much let me do anything almost. Like I sort of got raised with my parents by my 2 older brothers, which was really
sick.
Nice. And I think in that, like, they never really push their beliefs on me. I do think it's quite natural for a young boy to want the approval of their dad. I think that's quite natural, just based on gender. But yeah, just like as in like...
Because do you feel like you already had your mom's approval just by existing? Was that the vibe?
And I also think maybe just being the youngest. And I was the softest. Like in my family, I'm by far the closest one to a girl. Like I would do more things that my mum wanted to do. I would spend more time with my mum. I was just softer by nature. But I think in that softness as well, I really wanted my dad's approval. because my other brothers were just like a little bit rough and they would run at dangerous situations and they would fight more often. And my dad was like, yeah, like he respected that a bit more. And I think probably partially the reason why I started boxing, right? But
were they doing sports?
Heaps of sports, yeah. That's something that I really liked about my childhood. We played almost any sport we wanted.
But were they playing competitively as you? Okay.
Yeah. So they played like AFL, cricket, tennis. I started boxing. I was the only one in the family to start boxing.
Okay.
But I think looking back, the big part of it is because I feel like my manhood got questioned a lot. I wasn't as strong, I wasn't as tough, I wasn't as fearless as my two older brothers, and I think it's quite natural for young boys to sort of want the approval of especially men. I don't know if it's the same for females, but like I definitely wanted the respect of my dad and my two brothers, and I think I started boxing because that's what boys do. Boys fight. That's what we see on movies. We see these action figures saving the planet and they fight, you know, and that's...
But that's what we were talking about like not so long ago, about like the whole dance between like masculine and feminine energy. And how like you end up repressing some stuff at childhood that were actually like your strengths now, I guess, to be able to like kind of dance into both and be like, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, but I don't know if I would have had the courage to be able to do that if I didn't learn to fight. I think the ability to, for me personally, I can't speak for anyone else's experience, but just my ability to know that if someone was to come in here right now and you know, do something bad to anyone in this room, like I would, I don't know until it happened, but I would hope that I would feel comfortable to protect you guys. And of course...
So we have someone invited.
Yeah, come on in.
But you feel like that allows you to then be more comfortable in whatever energy you want to be in the room?
Yeah, just because I think there's not that fear of someone can critique me or judge me, but I'm like, all right, like if you're a real tough man, let's see.
But that's what's really interesting about people that are really trying hardcore to affirm their masculinity is that it often comes from the fear of like, I don't actually deep down feel like I can like defend or play that part if needed. So then I kind of like push that energy when it's not needed and actually problematic for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you said like you had to go to the point where you're like, I actually have it in me. I don't need to be like rubbing it on people's face.
Yes, I call it all bark, no bite. You know, like they've got all heaps of energy.
Yeah,
they say a
whole
lot.
macho energy.
They look strong, but they've got no bite. But they put up this persona that they have got a lot of bite, but they don't. And I don't know. Like I think, arguably, and it kind of breaks my heart because I think it does come down to like they're potentially, I don't know this for certain, but they're potentially insecure in their masculinity. And I think if we especially teach more young boys to be a little bit more secure.
How would you do that as a parent? Like how does that look like actually when it comes to your communication and the things you implement?
It's so hard to know because I'm not a dad, so I'm talking from a place of...
I know, but you're talking from a place of like a child who didn't feel that. And who was looking for it through different stuff, including sport for you, but you can find it if you join a gang or like whatever people do.
Yes. I think for me, one of my life goals is to get a combat sport gym. It doesn't have to be boxing because I think striking is quite negative potentially for brain development, etc. But I think a jiu-jitsu, wrestling, things where it's not striking, I think teaching young people, not just boys, but teaching young people from a young age the art of that, and you have to bow to your master. You take your shoes off before you step on the mat. There's a lot of beautiful lessons that I think give young people especially the ability to work out what their body's capable of and what their body isn't, and knowing that this person's too big for me, so I'm not going to talk right now, or I'm not going to antagonize the situation. Yeah, you know what I mean? I think it's really important for young people to be humbled a little bit, and combat sport often does that. One thing that I don't have a partner, but one thing that I really want in the future when I do have kids is my kids to do one form of dance. Any form of dance, the one that I connect with the most.
You know, that it's interesting that you mentioned that, and after jiu-jitsu, because I was talking about that with a friend the other day who does it, and he was talking to, and I wonder how that translates into boxing, but he was talking to me about the play with energies, in the sense of like you realize that it's not always about resisting, and a lot of the times it's mostly about not resisting but just redirecting energy towards them. And I found that so interesting because it's like I found that interesting in terms of like someone who would do boxing like you and then go into dancing. I feel like it's still a play with energies that's really weird. I guess boxing is different than jiu-jitsu because you actually go for it.
Yes.
In a different way. But I think it's funny like to learn as a kid. You don't resist everything.
Yes.
But you redirect energies. Like have you like seen it like that as you're grown, or like how do you?
I've never really thought about it, but I do think that dance, boxing, combat,
how did dance feel for you in regards to
I just think it's an energy release. It's an energy exchange, you know, and the beautiful thing about combat sport or dance, and I do think that combat sport is a form of dance. It's just different.
Yeah.
You know, you're dancing with another person. You're reading what they're doing on their cues, and you're reacting to their cues. They're reacting to your cues. It's quite beautiful in that sense when you think about it spiritually. And I have said often that, you know, obviously, you know, any form of dance is quite intimate, it's quite beautiful. I've said combat sport, especially boxing, for me, is one of the most intimate places besides sex that you can go as a human. You know, like you're locked in a sacred square. There's one other, a referee, but you don't really see them, you don't pay attention to them. And there's this like energy exchange that is just so intense and so visceral, so primal. And it's hard not to be so amped up and charged up. It is quite a sexual experience, although there's no sex.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah,
Girls make fun a lot about boys. Like when they're fighting, you're like, you're kind of got like you're going in between all the time, you know.
Yeah.
But how do you like deal within that context with like the fear of going too far? Like how do you deal with boundaries within yourself in terms of like, because that's always my question when I watch boxing and stuff. When I'm like, I don't know, this is like a stupid generalization, it's just what I've seen, and I haven't seen a lot, but I feel like I get more scared when I'm watching women for some reason, because I feel like sometimes it looks like, at least from the exterior, like we go further in that environment, just because it looks, maybe it's just because it's women, but it just feels like that fear of hurting the other person goes a bit farther until they're stopped. Do you trust that you're gonna be stopped and then you just go for it, or do you have like some sort of like like how do you deal with the boundaries of like engaging and then having this kind of outside thing about where would too far go and like where you're putting someone else's safety in danger?
I think every combat athlete is different, right? Because there is some athletes that are arguably the best athletes that we've seen in the history of sport. Mike Tyson, a prime one, like they would knock someone down and then they would be on the ground and they go to hit them again. Like they're like, it's like it's a dog act, like, you know. It's a what? It's a dog act, like it's disrespectful.
Okay.
But I don't personally, I don't feel like I've got that in me. I don't.
Do you feel like it's something that people would have in them, or is it like a switch?
Mike Tyson has spoke about it. He got almost brainwashed. He spoke about it openly. He got brainwashed, he felt, from a young age to become a killer, you know, to become and it was almost like, it's like that ultimate primal, like people always forget we're just animals at the end of the day. Like we like to think we're so civilized and you know, we separate ourselves from the animal kingdom, but we are just animals, and Mother Nature is bloody wild and unforgiving, and you know, some of the stuff that goes on in Mother Nature is just.
But that's why it's like, that's why it's scary to access it. Yes. You guys are accessing things. I feel like the way dancers and the way people like are accessing sides of all of us, I feel. But how do you access that within a limit? Like how have you dealt with not being stopped, like not having like that fear stopping you from like doing your best and being competitive, you know?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it does come down to like nature nurture potentially as well. Like I do think my overwhelming nature is quite soft. Like I started boxing from an insecure little boy wanting to prove myself, and then in that my nurture, the person that I've become based on all the repetition that I've done, is now a little bit more aggressive, but I can control it because my nature is actually quite soft. So I do think when I'm going there, I don't know if I could ever get to a position where I'm like on top of someone just letting, you know, like fully immersing in like the anger. Because I don't
it's
think
a wild
that's
thing
natural,
to watch.
But I do think there is some people who are just psychotic, you know, and it's a small percentage, but it does happen, and it does make the sport a little bit gross sometimes.
This world doesn't like the sport, or like the world doesn't like itself?
Both, like, because you think about it, regardless if people find combat sport or not, like there is always going to be, like regardless, because I've thought of this a lot, like regardless if you ever fix all issues in young boys or people, right? There's always going to be wild ones in the bunch, you know. That's like,
of course,
you know, it's just how it works. Like, you're never going to fully stop all violent crime. You know, no matter how good the laws are, no matter how educated young people are, there's always going to be wild ones in the bunch, which is like a wild reality, you know.
And do you think within that, when it comes to like the approach to sport as a kid, when you're saying that you would like have your kids to dancing, and the way you and your siblings were approached, who or how was discipline integrated? Because in order to get to your level, you like have had a crazy discipline, which is one of the things I wanted to pick your brain on. But how was it integrated from like a nurturing point of view? Like, how did you see it? How did you?
My parents never pushed anything on me, which is.
But you were tiny when you started.
Yeah, I was 9, but it very much come off the back of, you know, like I felt so inferior, you know, and no one really like my parents. I tell this story, my parents are like, what are you talking about? Like, they didn't see it. It's
of course,
it's all internal. It was my perception of my reality, and I think I felt quite inferior. I felt quite soft, and I think I just wanted to prove myself. And
that was enough for you to like have a waking up at this specific time habit, have a
that didn't start straight away. Like, I started at the age of 9, fell in love with the sport instantly, and then everything my coach said, like I loved my coach. He's such a beautiful man.
How was that relationship? Like, how long did it last, and how?
20 years. He's still my coach.
Is he still? No.
He's 83 as well.
You're
like,
joking.
He's amazing. Like, I love that man with all my heart.
That's sick.
He's coming towards the back end of not just his life, but definitely his boxing life. But he's a beautiful man. I think it's quite nice as well for young people to receive attention, affection, love.
To be mentored is one of the biggest gifts in life.
Especially someone outside of their family. Someone who like...
So how did you find him? Did your parents find him?
Yeah, just like the local gym. Yeah, just the local gym. And he's a beautiful man. And he used to say this, and he used to say it as a joke, but I was so young, I didn't realise the joke. And he would say, make sure you go home and sleep with your boxing gloves on. And I would go home and I would sleep with my boxing gloves on. Right? But I didn't realise that until I was an adult. And he was like, he was just taking the piss, and he was just joking. But like...
And then he just realised when he was travelling with you in a hotel, and he was like, what the fuck are you doing?
I'm like, I generally was just like, anything, if he said jump, I said how high. And I think...
But did you feel like, did he see it in you? Like, did he make that conversation? Did you feel like seen as a child by him? Or did he just like approach you like, you're gonna get there if you put in the work and that's it? Or did he tell you like, you have a strength here? And
Yeah, he definitely did. But like, I think as a young person, I didn't see that he often said that to everyone, you know, but he would say it to me.
It doesn't matter.
He would say it to me, and I would think that I was so special.
You're right, to see your siblings. If you knew.
Then I got older, and I was like, oh my God, he says it to everyone. But like, it's still, like, I don't know, I still call that man, he lives in Victoria, and I'm living in Sydney now, but like, I still call that man weekly, and just, I have so much love and care and affection for that guy. So I think I met him at the right time, and I needed to meet him.
Yeah, it's always like that. So how have you navigated mentorship now that you're an adult? Not only in terms of like, how do you find mentors, but are you mentoring someone?
Oh, it's probably not. It's probably like, when it comes to mentoring other people, like, of course there's people in the gym that I always try, and I just know that, I guess, especially in the boxing world, I hold a bit of power in the sense of like young kids in the gym, they look up, they want to be where I am eventually. So I think I do know that there is a bit of responsibility. Like, if I walked into the gym and was eating KFC, you know, it would be showing a bad example, and I know that.
It's interesting that you have that. Okay.
Yeah, so
you just eat it in the toilet.
Yeah, in the car and hide.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone. But I just make sure that like I put my best foot forward, because I do, like, I'm making sure that I'm rocking up on time. I'm, you know, putting in obviously effort when I train. I'm not cutting corners. You know, I'm trying, because I do recognise that there is a responsibility, and I had that growing up. There was people in the gym that showed up for me, and you know, were good role models for me. They gave me lifts home, you know, because I'd always catch the bus, like just stuff like that. And I think I had that growing up, and I think it is. It's
so special how we're all just standing on the shoulders of giants as we go.
Once, have you heard that quote? You'll love it. It's like, see, the best trees grow because they were seeded by men that don't ever see the tree grow.
I
I
love
just butchered that whole quote, but like, you get.
You did.
I was like, oh no.
I got you.
I was just going, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
And then the tree, and then there's like a leaf, and it falls, but we grow.
End of the day, give me a break. I get punched in the head for a living.
So what's my excuse? But yeah, no. It's beautiful and it's true, because I think a lot of the time I've seen that in other areas of life when it comes to, there's a moment in people's career when, in terms of like wins and achievements and money, they kind of have gotten to a place where they're cool and they get more of a high from helping new people and from like feeling useful for, in that sense, that rather than just keep on going. Doesn't mean they stop, but I feel like there's a point where like your high starts being like feeling useful for someone starting and feeling like the tough stuff that you had to go through, because I'm sure like the tough stuff that you went through can like stop someone from going through it.
There's a quote from Ben Crow. It says, life's biggest truism is life isn't about us as individuals, it's about the impact we can have on others. And most of us will probably realise that when we have kids or have a family and we're of service to other people. You know, we work for them, we provide for them.
But you are of service of other people before having kids. Of
course. And I think a lot of my life has been so egocentric and self-driven, like my goals, my ambitions. And I think I did get to a level of success. Like I got to an Olympic Games, and my first ever Olympic Games at 23, and you know I stood on the podium, and I think I got to a level of success, and then the world was coming at me quickly after that, and it was all just like me. But like I think it got to a point where I was like, it's not actually that fulfilling, in the sense of like you're standing on here with all these accolades and people, yes, are respecting you, but you are in a sense standing not alone, because there's so many people that help me get there, but it does feel alone sometimes.
But it's the kind of like extreme to go to the middle, because it's a bit like what you said about like manhood, like I go all the way to then come back. I feel like Russell Brand was saying that about his like career success and everything, about how like you can look back and be like, oh, it was all ego, but a lot of the time people that are serving now had to have that drive. There's a quote that I'll also smash, but it was kind of like, this is like a very spiritual thing, but it was kind of like your ego is in service of your soul. And it was really interesting to hear that, because I have like this massive declared war towards my ego, like you're fucking me up all the time. But there's things where like you're pushed to discover things via kind of like intentions or pulls that did not feel very pure when they started. So like maybe like in the sense of like at the beginning you were just trying to prove masculinity, but then like you've directed that in so many ways. But would you have started boxing if you didn't have that like ego quest to prove yourself?
Yes.
And he was kind of saying that, Russell Brand, on what he did, because he was like, it's really easy for me now, really easy, but it's kind of like easier for me to sit here and be like, oh, now I know that's not all that matters, but because I went there and then I felt empty.
Yes.
And then I was like, ooh.
Yes. I think the only way out is through. Like you don't ever realize that until you go through.
Like as a personal thing when you have these ambitions, because you're very, very ambitious.
Yes. Someone said something recently and I really liked it. It was like, you can read Seneca, you can read Pluto, you can read these ancient philosophers, but until you have lived experiences of what they're saying, it won't connect with you. Like you need to be able to read something that Seneca says or Pluto says, and when you can draw on something that you've experienced from your life, then that will read true to you. But until that, it's just like you'll read it and it won't really ingrain with you. And I think I'm grateful. Obviously, we both are naturally extremely curious. We think about a lot. We examine ourselves a lot. Like, we want to be better. We're quite ambitious. Yeah. But I like that. Like, I like
I think it's about the curiosity rather than the quest itself.
It's almost like what I've found out about myself, it's like I'm in search for answers of questions that I never want the answer to. Yeah.
But then you would get boring if you did.
Yeah, it's the quest of the search that I really love.
Well, do you feel like part of your curiosity, was it influenced by the fact that you were traveling so much since you were young? When did you start traveling?
I was really fortunate. My parents used to love like camping and four-wheel driving. So in Australia, I was camping from a young age doing like 3-4 week trips, often 6 monthly, you know, so it was really nice. So we spent a lot of time in nature.
But within that, it was different, right? Because were you like spending really time with different people and stuff, or was it more like just going into nature type of vibes? And then you started having that interactions with other cultures when you left?
Yeah, when I was about 18, we started interacting with other cultures. But yeah, so like from a young age, though, we've always like loved traveling and being out of our home environment, which has been really nice. But from about the age of 18, I started traveling overseas for boxing and spent probably 6 months away a year just in different cultures. I lived in the Philippines for a period of time. I've spent a lot of time in Asia, Europe, and I think it's really nice to sort of boxing as well. You often go to places like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, you know, Azerbaijan, places that you would never go, right, or most likely never go if I was just a normal, you know, 20-year-old traveling Europe. Like, you wouldn't go to places like that, right? So I'm really grateful that I got to see that the world's a big place and there's so many people.
Did you feel like, yeah,
there's so many people who live differently to us.
And did you feel like that curiosity was awoken by the fact that you were also like being like faced with very different beliefs, or was it like just a thing that was always there, and like, or did you feel like, were you confronted to prejudgments that you had before and then?
Good question. I do think naturally that, like, of course you have a preconceived idea of what a place is going to be like. I remember I was 18 when I went to Azerbaijan, and knowing where it's situated on the map, it's, you know, right near the Middle East, right next to Turkey. So I remember thinking this must be like a really big culture shock.
Yeah.
And then I went there and it was arguably still one of the best countries that I've been. It was beautiful. How? Absolutely beautiful. Like the architecture, they've got a lot of money from oil. The architecture is amazing, and of course there was some rough areas there, but like overall, like it was a magical place. But I do think that every young person, I stand by this, every young person is naturally curious, but then we get it taught out of us. Every young person is like, why do I do this? Because they're seeing something for the first time. But then we're like, if we don't keep that, fostering that curiosity, then I do think that we see the world as black and white, where it's like the curiosity is the grey and understanding the grey.
I think it's true that is natural, but I think it's different levels. But it is true that it's turned out. Like, I had a friend ask me, like someone at work, be like, why are you thinking about that? Like, just a random thing the other day. And then I was like, why am I asking myself this? Like, where did it come from? You know, when you try to track back your thoughts to what started this, and then you're in a very far-fetched thing that has nothing to do with your life or anything. Yeah, literally. And you're like, but if there's wind here, is there like, and does it go in the same direction? And I think like it is true that as a child you have it. I think it's also about whether or not it's celebrated. Because I don't know how culturally you felt it here, but I think that has changed dramatically in Latin America when it comes to our generation. So my mom's generation changed it, but it was like it's like a phrase in Spanish that you're disrespecting the elders when you're questioning things. Like it's a thing that is known that, like, if you're in like a living room with a lot of adults and you as a kid ask something, first of all you're like disrespecting the fact that adults are speaking, which is like important things are being said. Then they also see it as like attention-seeking behavior, and then it's also like if they don't have the answer, it's gonna annoy them. You know what I mean? So it's like a cultural thing about you just don't ask stuff to your elders, you just keep your head down. Do you feel like is that like part of the culture in Australia, or not really?
It's hard to know. Because I did grow up in a family where my mum was a medium, so she naturally was
that's so different.
She was left of centre. And then my dad was very, you know, old-fashioned, traditional Aussie, just an ochre bloke. Like,
was she a medium since she was young? How did that start?
So when she was younger, she got diagnosed with schizophrenia, because you'd go to like a psychiatrist or a psychologist back then, and they're like, I can speak this, you know, they're like, what is it? Like, you need to go into a psych ward. Like, they very much viewed my mum as, but she said that she had feelings that she could do this from a young age, but then it got suppressed because
of course,
they were like, she's crazy. And then she got to it, like, my mum's definitely not crazy. I don't know if I fully believe it, to be completely honest with you. Like, I know my mum's not a liar, but it's what she believes, you know. It could be true. It could be true. Like, I'm not sure what I believe, but Yeah, so she's pretty, like, she's been doing it now probably for like 15, 20 years. Like,
That's the whole point, that it would be as ridiculous for you to say that you're sure as it would be for you to say that you're not. Like,
Yeah.
how do we know?
I don't know.
She might, you know what I mean?
It's even like my argument when it comes to like I'm the least religious person, but just knowing that it could be true. Like, I don't think it is, but it could be. Like, I can't say for certain that it's not true, but I don't think logically for me it fully connects with myself. But like, Jesus could have died on the cross. He could have, you know, come back to life. Mary could have been a virgin. Like, that could have been true. Highly unlikely, but it could have been true, right?
Yeah. But I think that's the point, and that's where you get to, like, at the end, when it comes to, like, even pushing it. I felt like I was very religious growing up by myself. They were not even forcing it. I just had an obsessive personality. So I was like, if I believe, Christian, if I believe, I'll believe more than everyone in my family, and I'll go to church. Like, always that obsession. And my friend mentioned it. So my childhood friend mentioned it a while ago, which I kind of like assumed everyone had forgotten. I was like, hopefully everyone forgot that, like, version of me that was trying to force people. And she was like, yeah, funny. Do you remember that time? And then just mentioned something because I was having the school bus dropping me at church. Anyways. I'll cut this part. But then what was really funny about it was that then now she's talking to me about the fact that she did a confirmation and a whole thing. And I was like curious because no one around me is really religious. And then we spoke about it, and I was like, the only time I was really sure of what I believed, I was telling people that I was sure, and I was trying to, like, preach or make people believe what I believed in my family, because my uncles and atheists, like, they were like, shut up. Not shut up, but like, what are you saying? Was out of, like, not really believing it. Like, fear of, like, I need to be right and this needs to be the only religion and stuff. Otherwise, like, the world's really scary.
Yes.
If I cannot feed it into, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then I feel like, then I went to the opposite side of not believing anything, and then I'm in my spirituality thing. But then it's interesting because I think it's everyone who I feel like feels safe within their beliefs has the same approach of, like, I have no idea if what I believe is the right thing.
Yes.
Like, this works for me in some sort of weird way.
Yeah.
But I might just die, and I might have some, like, Aboriginal God come to me and be like, you were so wrong. Like, you didn't do the right ritual, like, burn.
I generally hope that there is something, but, like, I don't know.
There is what we have as well.
Well, we have, but my argument with it is, it's like that a blade of grass is a living thing, it's a living organism. So are you saying that if we're going to go to heaven, that blade of grass is also going to go to heaven because it's a living organism? That's my theory. Like, so it's like,
I think they say, I stopped believing when they say dogs don't go to heaven because they cannot.
Go anyway,
then you're like, they would be the number one ones to go to heaven. Surely.
The most deserving.
Yeah, but it's always about fear, right? When it comes to your attachment to it.
Yeah, no, I think so. I don't know. I think I've got to a position now in my life where it's like, I used to care so much about black people, sounds similar to you, like the people shared similar beliefs to me, you know, but it's like, I don't actually care what you believe. As long as you show good attributes and you're a good human and you're fairly kind most of the time.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care if you believe in a God, no God, like, but I don't want to push my beliefs on you, and don't push your beliefs on me. Like,
that's interesting, because I wanted to ask you about how you approach choosing your friendships and your circle. Like, when you're just saying it's not about believing the same thing as you, but do you have, what are, like, the things that you, like, look for? Because the reason why I also wanted to, like, go into that with you was because I know you're quite ambitious, and I feel like in general ambitious people feel like they need that energy around them as well. Is that one of the things you look? How do you choose your circle and the people who you spend the most time with?
Yeah, I grew up in Victoria, and I'm still mates with everyone I grew up with. They're all really good people, but it's one of the things, if I met them now, I don't know if we would have a friendship, you know?
Yeah.
We are very much friends based on our location, and I love everything about them and who they've evolved into. And but the people that, once I moved to Sydney at 20, I was 24 when I moved to Sydney, I become friends with people based on values, which is really nice. And the values that I think I focus on are being extremely active, you know, I'm obviously extremely active. I love moving my body. So I met a lot of people through similar interests of going to the gym and I think authenticity and playfulness is a big one. Like, I feel like you read, especially in Bondi, and I've got this too. Maybe this is a projection of what's going on inside myself, because maybe I'm not always authentic to myself.
Yeah, no.
But like, I feel like Bondi is arguably for myself the most inauthentic place I have been, and it's sad. It breaks my heart. I feel like a lot of people are playing a role of who they think they should be, rather than just being themselves. And I think in that, it's like that's sort of it. I don't want to be around people like that.
But why did you choose Bondi?
I moved here for a girl. Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved
and
here
she was
for a
in
girl.
Bondi.
She was in Bondi, yeah. And then
you were like, I like the coffee shop, so I'll stay.
Yeah, well, it feeds something inside me, because it's got a lot of opportunity when it comes to media. And also as well, like, it's a vortex, and there's so much happening. Like, there is so much happening, and I've got a really good community here too. Like, but I do think that authenticity...
There's good food.
There is good food, although I can't eat a lot because of boxing, which sucks.
But authenticity, like as an energy, as a thing that you just feel when people are trying.
You can feel when, and maybe some of my friends that I'm really good friends with now, like, they wouldn't, in certain environments, they might not be authentic and they're playing a role, but we all play a role.
We all are, yeah.
More often than not, you feel them that they're quite genuine. You know, quite genuine. They say what they mean. A lot of my mates, funnily enough, didn't grow up in this area. They grew up in the country, or you know, but they share this, like, their word means something, or you know, like they're good with money. They're not going to backstab you, or like, it doesn't feel like that anyway. And I think a lot of my friends here are super active, very genuine, seem very kind, which is nice.
It's funny that you mentioned being active, because I wonder what that comes into play. So I always like blame it on just habits and stuff. But when you speak about it, I'm just feeling like it's also, I feel like also people are different energetically when you know they're active and they have that connection to your body. There's like some sort of, I don't know if it's more aliveness. Because I don't really care about what you do. It's interesting, like, in terms of, like, I don't care about what someone does in terms of in their training, if they do Pilates or they like jump rope, they like box. But you can see a different energy when people are kind of in that quest. And I do think that's something that you do have on the eastern suburbs. Like, people have more of a relationship. I'm not saying healthy, but more of a relationship to their bodies.
Yes. I think it's
sometimes.
I think for me it comes down to like people are searching for that, to feel good inside themselves. And it's an easy fix. You move your body for 20 minutes minimum and you will feel something a little bit better. Not completely better, but it does temporarily remove you from feeling ugly or feeling shit or feeling average.
Which is probably why.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, if we're made to like look for that.
I've thought about this. Like, is physical exercise the ultimate distraction from yourself? I've thought about it a lot. I've thought about, like, as everyone says, and don't get me wrong, I will continue to move my body, but it is like, is it just temporarily distracting myself because I can't sit still, because when I sit still I feel average, and then I start criticizing myself, and you know, but then when I move my body I don't, you know, but it's like, well then, am I actually finding out who I am, or am I just distracting myself from sitting still and learning who I am?
But I feel like you can do both, in the sense of, like, yes, but, and I agree that sometimes it's like a band-aid, but don't you, like, how do you feel like every time you box, in comparison to other sports, because you do different sports, you know, that state of flow?
Yes.
Do you feel like you reach it only boxing, or do you feel like, is that what you're looking for every time?
Yeah, I think,
because that wouldn't be distracting, that would be more like something else, like connecting to something else, no?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think if you haven't already could tell this, like, my brain is so active, like, it's on all the time, and I think the most beautiful time is when you lace up your gloves and you stand in there with another person and they're trying to punch your head in, like, the whole
that's when you're in flow,
your whole world goes silent. Like, it's hard, you're in ultimate survival. It is the most beautiful and chaotic and mesmerizing place to be, because you're just, I don't care about the taxes that I've got to pay, or like my
there's something like human about separating from that,
just temporarily.
Just when you get into danger, I feel, because I feel like when you describe that, that's like very similar to how, like, diving feels like being in apnea when you're not breathing. I feel like there's a moment where you kind of just disconnect.
Yes.
And I think Russell Brand, again, going back to Russell Brand, because I think you guys share a lot of like similar things in the way like you connect dots. But like he was speaking about how they were asking him about his whole routine, because he does like cold baths and jumps into things and does sports and all the thing. And he was like, it's like it's a need not to go crazy. As in, he was like, oh, it sounds like cool and I sound like, oh, I'm like so sporty and so healthy, but I actually go nuts if I don't, in my head. If I don't have all these like stops all the time. So he was like, it sounds romantic, but it's not.
No.
It's just like, and I really felt that, because I was like, yeah, sometimes I do feel that. And it's good to have that knowledge of like, can I also sit still?
Yeah, I'm envious, super envious of people who I obviously don't know what goes on inside their brain, or are they ducks underwater and they just contain it really well, but like I'm so envious of people who just seem so calm.
Chill.
You know,
We're just not thinking about
found it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only
But
time, the only time I feel is at the end of the day when I'm exhausted. You know, exhausted.
Yeah, and sometimes you try to do everything to get to that point where people are just since the morning.
I'm on the couch. Yeah, but they wake up and they're like that, and I'm envious, but also like maybe that's the thing that gets me up and like lights a cracker in my ass, and I just do things. You know?
Do you meditate?
Yeah.
When did you start?
I want to say end of 2020, but definitely 2021. Yeah.
How? Or why?
Have you heard of Sam Harris? So
No.
he's like world famous. He's got this app called Waking Up, and he had like a 50-day course, and I just did a meditation every day for 50 days. And then I continued...
Like guided?
Guided, yeah. And then I continued to use that app, guided meditation, for probably like another year after that. And then now I only do silent. Yeah. Just sit still for 15 to 20 minutes.
And have you seen the impact within your performance and within sport since you started?
Yeah, I think it comes in waves. Sometimes I realize that I'm not actually meditating, I'm just sifting through my thoughts. But I think it does organize my brain a little bit more.
What do you mean you're not? So what is meditating to you if you're saying that you're not meditating when
Well,
you're
in the sense of like, it definitely is a form of meditation because you're never going to stop your thoughts. But I think sometimes it's just like a time where I'm just like literally thinking for 15 minutes. And I don't even catch myself and bring myself back to my breath. But what meditation is for me is when I'm doing it properly, I catch myself in a thought, and then I go, oh, I'm in a thought, I'm in my brain, and then I bring myself back to my body. And it's just continuously doing that for 15 to 20 minutes. The dance. But then sometimes I find myself just literally being in my brain for 15 to 20 minutes and not bringing myself back to the breath. And maybe that's what I needed in that day.
Yeah.
You know, but I do think that I feel best is when I am continuously bringing myself back to my body and out of this, because this is
I love the like, that's not you.
Yes.
And then what if like they said, that's not you.
Yeah.
And then just like that constant game. But it's interesting within that because it's different in other things, I guess, that are putting you less in a dangerous situation. When I'm thinking about the state of flow, like acting or in other stuff, you're not really in a situation where you can have you are in a situation where you can have other thoughts and get out. But do you ever have intrusive thoughts? Like when you're fighting, do you still have that voice, or is it really like you're completely out because you'll get knocked?
Yeah, I think the only thought that would come would be like a thought that is intrusive based on what is happening. But that's probably more prior, in the sense of like, prior to actually getting inside the ropes, you're thinking that I'm going to get knocked out, I'm going to get embarrassed, my whole ego's on the line, my manhood, my whole personality, everything is just going to come crashing down. That's beforehand. Very rarely when you're in it. And
nothing. It's just presence.
It's just presence. Like
that's why it's addictive, I guess, as well. Because like, you know, that as a pitch sounds like something you would want to do.
It's the purest form of meditation. Like you are just there. And to be honest, most sport, for me, if you're playing it right,
you can get there, but that's exactly what I was trying to get to. Like you can get there in a lot of sports and in art and in a lot of things, but you're not that much in danger when you're not. You know what I mean? Like you'll get out of character, or if you're running, you won't get like knocked out because you're thinking about why am I here? What's
It's the most, and I think that is, for me, one of the most beautiful things. Because I remember I wrote this poem, I probably can recite it. As the world begins to feel ever so quiet, as my mind begins screaming war cries, never do I feel so alive, never do I feel so myself. Man versus man, ego versus ego, grateful to be reminded all that we are is barbaric animals trying to act civilized. And the last few lines, grateful to be reminded all that we are is barbaric animals trying to act civilized, I think that's all we are. We are just...
When did you write that?
It was before a match. Yeah, the day before. Yeah, but I was like very much in it. Yeah.
When did you start writing? How has that tied into?
I remember I tried in school, and I was quite stupid at school. I felt quite stupid based on the syllabus or the curriculum that we had. But I think Matthew McConaughey was actually my inspiration behind starting his book Green Light. It's a great book if you haven't read it.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books.
Best.
But you were already big, right? Because Green Lights came in 2020.
Yeah. Well, he was my inspiration. Though I didn't start writing.
Did you start in 2020?
2021. Yeah, I started writing in 2020.
I started journaling hardcore because of Green Lights.
It's amazing, isn't it? I think it's a beautiful book.
I think I was so jealous because when he just went like, I have all my journals since I'm like 9 years old. I was like,
how crazy is this? It was so frustrating. So I released a book last year, and I think it was 4 journals that I had from maybe about 9, and there were some things that were like childish and playful, and I was reading them, and I brought them on a flight from Melbourne to Sydney, and I left them on the plane. Never saw them again. Four journals from the age of 9 to, maybe not 9, maybe like high school, 12 to 22, gone.
that truly is a work on detachment that I don't think I have even in 10 years of maturity to do. Because like I had that on my last trip to LA. They lost my bag in Hawaii, and they were gonna give me a massive amount of money because they thought they lost the bag. And I was like chilling, like I'm just gonna replace everything. There was nothing that important. I'm not attached to objects. I'm one with the universe. Then I remembered that I had my journal there, and that I was almost at the end for the last year. I did mayhem. Like lost it on them, when like told them that I had this equipment for the podcast, invented this thing that I was gonna make them pay, like lost it, and then they found the bag and sent it. But it's the type of thing where you're like, everything else you can replace.
Yes.
I hope it's still good because I guess you would remember stuff, but it's just a snapshot into a version of you that is just like so precious. It's
nice to go back and sometimes read like a poem, because a lot of mine are just in my phone, because your phone notes.
Yeah, that's sick.
Somewhere. So I could go back
somewhere in the cloud.
Yeah, I could read a poem that I wrote in 2021. It's just like, it's like a snapshot in time of where I was, and it's just like even like something that I wrote like after the Olympic Games when I failed hard last year, like pretty raw stuff, like just. And you read it now, you're like, ooh, that little boy was scared. Like, he was like terrified. How did
your relationship to like failure and success, like within matches or in general, like has evolved throughout the years?
Yeah, I think it's so hard to know like exactly if it's out of me, but I do think that just like my level of, I'm so competitive. Like I've got a pretty strong ego. I don't think you would be successful in a sport like boxing if you didn't. But like I don't think I really care around like genuinely being the best in the world. Like when I was younger, like I was that obsessed and that focused on it that if my mum come up to me and said good luck, I would criticize her for it. And good luck is just like a beautiful thing, but I'd say, luck? You think I need luck? I'm like, you don't believe in me? Like it was like I was so intense and just almost like like a bit of an ugly human to be around sometimes, especially before a competition. I just don't feel like that person anymore, and I don't think that I'll get to a level of world greatness because of that, like the best ever. But I'm okay with that. And my level of like success is I want to be the best version of me that I possibly can be, while also still fostering the relationships that matter to me. And my relationship with my mum matters to me, and the relationships with my friends matter to me, but also I want to be the best possible athlete I can be.
But also, I guess they're the people who can trigger you the most. Because if someone random told you good luck, you wouldn't be as triggered as your mom. It's always like the people that you... It's crazy how the people whose love and who the relationship that you actually care the most about are the ones we hurt the most when we're in that like pre-something triggering. Everything you can say can be used against you.
Why do you think we do that?
I think because we believe them. I don't know, because I've asked myself that, because there's moments where I'm like, I observe my reactions to my mom's, what my mom would say, and even if I out loud I'm not going to scream at her or do anything like that, I can see, because I'm trying to be very conscious, I can see just my cortisol up when she says two things about something, you know, like with a friend I would just go off, but I think like with my mom or with partners or with close friends, the same weight I give to your if I have introduced you into my life, and if I speak to you, and if I have you in my circle, because I'm really, really selective, I care about the way you see the world, which inherently cares. I care about the way you see me, and the way I see myself on that day, I'm just gonna reflect it on people. So I can see it, because when I'm PMSing, everything my mom says is a trigger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And she's gonna make a comment. It's similar to what you said. Like, that made me think of the good luck. She's gonna give me like, just like an idea, like, oh, maybe you can do that as well. Or maybe this is something, and I'm like, oh, are you saying that I'm not gonna succeed in this? So I need like options B and C, and she's just seeing some other talent. And then I come to her 1.5 years later, like, guess what I started doing, you know? And then, but at the moment, because I woke up with an insecurity within that realm, I just feel like you only see reflections. But I think that with other people, I haven't given them that like stamp of approval on what do you think, you know?
Yes.
But if I'm picking someone's brain all the time, like my mom and everything, the moment she's gonna say something that reflects my fears,
yes,
it's gonna feel real.
I often wonder as well, like I've thought about, like, I think the inner voice that we have that is often quite potentially negative, or I think for me, and I think for many people that I've heard their stories, like, it often, if you listen close enough, it kind of sounds like one of our parents, you know, because like we are naturally learning, you know, everything from especially from our caregivers in that first 5-6 years of our life. We're learning love, we're learning hate, we're learning pain, we're learning grief, we're learning happiness. We learn it all from especially those people, and it's like they critique us when we're searching for their approval so much. It's like that voice then just becomes our internal voice. That's
so true what you just said. But I think it's not only your parents. I agree. With me, it's been more my uncle, because my mom's been very, very nurturing. My uncle as well, but my mom would approve of absolutely anything I do, as long as I'm doing my best. Like if I start like planting like trees, she's gonna be like, you're the best, like tree planter. But I felt like it was harder to get my uncle's approval, so then I was like, oh, that's the one I'm gonna go for. But I also have found through life that I've collected voices, and I've only realized that on the past years, where I would be like having an argument in my head, and I've found myself like, this is psychotic, but I've had that a lot, which I'm truly justifying my current decisions or having an argument in my head to someone in my past. So then I'll find out after like a while. So I was in the sauna, I think it was last year, when I was thinking about this really hard, and I realized I had been like 20 minutes in the sauna justifying to my ex's mom that I was doing this thing with this job, because I felt like I would feel judged because of this modeling thing where I like the type of outfit, and she was very conservative. Out of nowhere, and it was not like, oh, it's a confusing voice. No, I was literally having an argument in my head. But I'm so used to these random things that I was just like, what? And then I was just like, who am I justifying this to? Because my mom, no one's really conservative like that in my life. So why am I uncomfortable about this? And then I realized that I just collected someone who I felt it was hard to get the approval of. And I feel like I've done that with older women a lot for some reason through my life. So I feel like it's different for you. You were saying that for men, it's more about the man in your life and whatever. Yeah. I guess it depends on how you were raised. But I do feel like I've collected people. A really random old teacher that said that I don't know, just some criticism
What's that thing that potentially where we relive similar patterns, and obviously yours sounds like older women of some sort, and mine sounds like men, you know, but it's like we relive the pattern, it just looks a little bit different until we learn the lesson.
Until you learn the lesson. Yes. And that's what my mom told me with older women, and it stopped now. But my mom, it's so interesting that you said that, because the way I had a really hectic interaction with the neighbor, like an older woman, the neighbor of somewhere where I was pet sitting. Really no one you should ever be having a fight with. Yeah, I was just watching your videos, right? No, but I was like, I got into a really hectic interaction where she came, she was confused, but she started screaming at me and whatever. And the moment I said that to my mom, she was like, I repeated all her words. She heard me and she was like, she sounds exactly like the person in your head. And this woman was telling me like, why are you coming back at this time and whatever, because she thought I had left the dog, but the dog came with, like, anyway, so it was a whole thing. And that whole night, I spent the whole night feeling really guilty about like what I was doing and going out and whatever. So it was really interesting because it was like,
your mom sounds super switched on. Yeah.
She is, but then I get angry, of course, and then I call her like, I'm like, what are you saying? It's the woman in your head. And then you're like 3 hours later, like, oh, she does sound like a woman in my head.
She's right.
But I think it's so true what you say. That, and then that's what I was like thinking about when you said the whole thing about like you end up trying to find yourself through life, and you're curious about that. But I think the quest is more about cleaning shit up. You know what I mean? Because then I think I thought a lot of those beliefs were mine for a long time.
Yes. It's hard not to, right? Because
especially if it's your parents and stuff. And then you're all the time questioning, like, do I believe that? Do I believe? Because then you're like, I still was from Western culture. And then what did I get from this country that I lived in? And then what did I left from relationships and people that you believe? That's why you're more triggered by these things, because you're attracted to mirrors, I think. Yeah,
I do think that it's something that I've definitely... I'm focusing especially when it comes to relationships. If it feels familiar to me, it's not good.
Really?
So if something feels familiar, and which is a hard thing, right? Because it's like,
familiar as like a pattern, or as in like you feel familiar with the person?
If I feel a connection with someone that's like pretty strong pretty quickly, it's like alarm bells in my head right now, you know? It's just like, I would rather a slow burn where it's like we really get to know each other, because I have run the pattern before where I felt something almost on the first date, even sometimes before I even met this person. Yeah. We're just talking online, right? Which is a wild concept. And then
they're the one.
I think what that is, it's like something energetically in my body it's familiar. And my mum is an amazing human, but my first love relationship was with my mum. Yeah. And it wasn't amazing in some moments, and some of the core beliefs that I have instilled in me from that I'm trying to break. Just a little bit negative. So if something feels right quickly, I'm a lot more cautious now, where it's like when I was younger, I would run it head first.
But when you say feels right, it agrees to the patterns that you have on how you should be loved and stuff? Or because when you say, the first thing you said, like in terms of like if it feels familiar, it also like makes me think about comfort. And I do think there's some sort of like nervous system comfort you should feel. So you know what I mean? That is different from familiarity. As in like, wouldn't you get uncomfortable if it's completely unfamiliar?
Yeah, potentially.
Or is that what you're looking for?
Potentially, but I think there's a level of comfort. But I think there is some humans in this world who have had extremely toxic relationships with their caregivers growing up. Yeah. And it's like, that's all they know love to be, you know? So it's like, to them, their nervous system might feel comfort or might feel safe, but it's an extremely toxic reality because that's what they saw growing up, you know? So I think for me, it's like I want comfort in my soul, I want peace in my soul, but I think that will learn in time when I'm actually calm with this person, but that will take a lot longer than...
So how are you like testing your body in those situations to see like what are you feeling? Is it more like an intellectual thing or more like a...
It's really hard because I think you know how nice it is to feel in love. Like, it's the most beautiful emotion, and when you feel that for someone, you're like your nervous system feels that quickly. You're like, oh my god, it's like a drug. You want to feel it all the time. But I think I'm just a lot more conscious now that it's like, I think it comes naturally with maturity, and also like you don't want to put your heart on the line again. So just being a lot more cautious, that take your time, you know, and actually learn who the person is, because if you feel love or something quickly, you don't even know who this person is, right? You're like projecting your love onto them, and
that's
you're
the
forcing
thing.
them, you know?
Yeah, I was having this conversation with my friend the other day who's in LA, and she was being like, it's so hard to like detect and push away love bombing, because I'm like, of course it makes sense that you're in love with me the moment you went to like fully makes sense, like you're just a sane person. She was like, but then I have to remember that they don't know me, so that you have to give them the time. And it's like a funny thing, because like it's the whole thing about looking at mirrors, because then I feel like that also comes a lot with the validation that you were speaking about, when it comes to like, it's very, very different to feel loved than to feel validated. And I do feel in that regards, not like I know anything about life or that aspect, but I do feel like even in friendships and stuff, I am loved when someone has seen really like my shadows and stuff.
Yeah.
And it takes time to, like, you have to go through situations. And I realize I love people when we go on a road trip, the car breaks down, things happen, you see them missing a flight. Always see people that you date missing a flight. Reacting to like a bad customer service. Like, I think that's when you can be like, oh, okay.
Yes.
I see your humanity, but if you're like looking at someone on a date being all cute or like on their best light all the time, but that's validation at the beginning, because what do you feel when someone's like obsessed with you when you meet them?
Yeah. I also, something that I've thought about too, it's like, when it comes to like accepting a partner, especially in their ugliness, when it comes to humanity, you know, the flawed with the frustration of life, sometimes it's like, can I accept myself in those times? You know, do I like myself in those times when life knocks me down or life is frustrating for me? And I think sometimes no. And I think until I can accept myself in all of my ugliness and all of my humanity, then I don't think I'll ever have the capacity to accept someone else. You know, and maybe someone's just the wrong person, but it's like, if you're choosing to be with someone and then you see them in their humanness and you find it ugly.
But you can find it ugly. That's what I meant, in the sense of like, it's not about accepting everything, because I think it's like what type of shadows you're able to accept. You're gonna accept shadows from your friends, and like you're not gonna have someone who's just like, but within that, when I'm talking about seeing someone on those situations, is because there are things personally within friendships that I'm like, I'm not gonna deal with that. It doesn't mean I'm superior than you, or the way I would react to that is superior or I'm better than, but that's not a life that I choose, because I spend my whole day trying to put my cortisol down, and if you're gonna like lose your shit at random things like that, it's not my vibe. But the way I deal with some stuff might not be their vibe. But I do think you need to get to, it's not just about accepting it like blindly, because I think there are going to be different sides of shadow, and maybe someone's really resilient like that because they were raised by people that were traveling all the time, and they just have this like, but then it's really hard for them to open up and communicate, and you know.
Good point.
And then you're kind of like, okay, I can work with this. Part of your humanity. But the reaction maybe triggers trauma, and then you're like, out. You raise your voice out. You know what I mean?
Yes, no, I get you.
So I don't necessarily mean like, so I don't think it's necessarily things that you have within yourself, like you react the same way and then you love it. But I agree with what you're saying, that the things you don't like in others are often in you.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. Yeah, I'm like, geez, that person's arrogant. I'm like, oh.
Always with that,
Oh, shit.
And when someone's really annoying you, I've felt that a lot. I'm like, why are you so fucking full of it? I'm like, Or they would say stuff that you would say, and you'd feel like, I'm so healed from that behavior that I had when I was younger, and I cared about how I came across. And then you see someone really caring, which I think is the thing about Bondi. I think I was much more triggered by the eastern suburbs and stuff when I got to Australia, because I was trying to prove that I was not superficial. So then I was in that game. So then I was faced with that. I was like, oh, I just need to be in Newtown with like authentic people and artists. Whereas like now, I feel like the longer you're like comfortable with that side of you, and you're like, oh yeah, you're being superficial right now, aren't you?
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like less aggressive to like see people acting like that.
I remember the first time I really noticed it inside myself. I was driving. I didn't have a car in Bondi for like 2 years, and I was just driving in rental cars every now and then. And it was the cheapest rental. I'm like couldn't care less about, so I thought I couldn't. And I was driving with this No Birds rental car, and it had like a No Birds, like a Toyota Corolla. And I was driving in Bondi, and I just remember like feeling a sense of discomfort, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And I was like, oh, I'd care if someone was to see me right now in this rental car. And I'm like, why do I care? I'm like, because I felt I had to keep up this image.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, who do I care? I don't even know these people. Like, they don't know me. They just believe this image.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, well, then why am I feeding into that? And then I was like, it was just like this whole internal battle of like, always wanting the best for myself and sort of loving the image that has been created of the 20 years of work, but also knowing like, it's like, if I was to play in that, it's like, it's not authentic because I don't care about driving a nice car. I don't actually care. But then I was like, well, then why do I care if someone was to see me in this car?
But it's so good that you observe that. And I do think that with that, it comes to exposure therapy rather than running away from it, which was the opposite of what I was doing before. I feel like even in Paris, I was like pushing away these environments because I wanted to feel like I was so different. And when I lived in Bondi for a bit in between Coogee, and it was really interesting because I kept on saying I didn't care. And I know everyone in Bondi, because everyone from the industry and from like work, you see everyone in the Costa work, so you just know everyone. Yes. But it's different to go there, whereas when I was actually having to be in a hoodie towel to go to the beach every morning and do the groceries and cross everyone I know, looking like people could doubt if I own a home, like if I live somewhere like covered, then you're like, actually, I care a lot. Because you have the glasses. And then I think it comes to exposure therapy. I feel like this is really not easy for you, but you're very, very used because of your whole life and your whole background to be really disciplined. But I think this is one of the things people struggle with the most. So I really would love you to break down how you see discipline, because I think we and people like because of our habits, like it seems easier. But I think like when it comes to like being an athlete and being at the level of where you are and everything, all of like the spiritual side and the motivate, like it's all part of there and it's beautiful. But I think there's a very clear daily approach that you have to your nutrition. Yeah, like you mentioned, how do you like approach discipline and how do you like dance with it through life? Because I do think you're very, very disciplined. It's just that you're really used to it.
Yes.
Like how do you approach food and drink, like all the things that especially that Bondi would have?
Yeah, I think it comes down to like understanding that to be a professional athlete, it's like if you want to be competitive and it is an ego driven, if you want to be good, like you have to be disciplined in the sense of like, if I don't show up at this session at this certain time, if I don't get a certain amount of recovery, if I don't follow this diet, if I feel my body with shit, these certain outcomes will happen. Like it is just like almost non-negotiables if you want to be good at a sport, right? It's almost like, in a sense, it's easy. I would argue that it's easier for me to be disciplined than it is for my mum. My mum doesn't have a reason, or doesn't have a why, or doesn't have a desire.
Yeah, completely agree.
I have empathy for my mum in the sense of like, you know how easy it is for me to wake up and do what I have to do every single day because it's a part of my being. It's what I want. It's the identity that I've created. And when
it's the identity that you've created. Sorry, I think that's a massive deal.
It's the identity in the sense like, and when I was younger, I genuinely did believe that boxing success was going to change how I felt about myself. And inevitably it did. But success didn't change that. Yeah. It was just the accumulation of certain
the journey
things,
that it took you.
The journey that it took me. But I do something that when it comes to discipline, especially on because I'm not always disciplined. Like there's times that I...
No, but it must be much higher than an 80% or
Of
like
course.
80, which is much higher than most people.
Yes, but I do, because I remember like when I was extremely disciplined and getting success, it's like you got to understand that the fulfillment piece in life wasn't fully there. Like you might get this success and you might get external validation, you might get happiness, but also as well, the whole journey, you weren't able to go out with your friends and socialize. You weren't able to do this. So the fulfillment piece wasn't there. And something that I try and live with now, people call it the 80-20 rule, is just more often than not, I'm living to the man that I want to be. And the man that I want to be is a successful athlete, not the best and the greatest ever, but is a successful athlete. Okay, so what does a successful athlete does? He has to do these certain training regimens, he has to eat the certain diets, but also I want to be a man that loves his friends and has fun and is joyful. So if that means go have Brazilian, we had Brazilian once, does that mean go have Brazilian? Absolutely. Like live with your friends, and more often than not, I'm living to the man that I want to be.
And do you feel like right now, if you have to implement something else, how do you implement a new habit? Like, do you have like a structure for that? When you're like, okay, now maybe I need more recovery, so I'm going to have to start doing this, or like a few times a week. How do you start that? How do you jump into the habit loop now that you kind of have mastered it for stuff that are just natural now for you, like training?
I think when it comes to like, for me, setting something, like let's say you're setting, I think New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, but you said random things all the time.
Yes.
Your comedy thing.
Oh, yeah.
I was leaving for that.
Yeah. It's gonna come.
Still a habit though.
Yes. Yeah, so I think it's more start small. So like something like when I'm maybe like once or twice a year, I have some really low points where all of my discipline goes out.
Maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah, once or twice a year.
In 30,
it's just like
365.
really bad. And I'm just like, I have some really low points where it's like for like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, like I'm at a real low point and my discipline's out the window. I'm not sleeping properly. I'm training, but the training intensity is really average. My diet's like terrible. And I think the thing that often gets me out of it is starting small. I start with fasting. So I do 1 day of fasting. And fasting has its own benefits. I have no idea. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea what that's good for you. But what it does for me is I want to eat food. But what it does is I withhold for 24 hours. And then it resets something in my body that I have my word back with myself. I said I was going to do something that was hard and I didn't want to do it. And then I did it, and then it's like,
so good.
I started, and then it's like that one thing starts, it's like a little degree shift inside myself, something positive, and then you can add more things on in a week's time, 2 weeks' time. It's just like starting that one thing when you feel so negative, and you're like, you just have, it could be like mowing the lawns, getting out and mowing the lawns, and like, I feel so negative, but then you got up and
3 centuries ago, not in one day.
Yeah, I was like, it's like, no, I'm mowing lawns.
I know what you're going.
Yeah.
You're gonna go to your cows.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just like picking that thing that you don't really want to do. And I do think a big key part of it is like at the end of the 24-hour fast is like sitting in it of going like, I just did that. And
fuck, I love that. Yeah, you're so right. Because I'm trying to look back at fast. Yeah. I think what you just said, like, summarizes everything, that like you get your word back to yourself.
Oh, so nice.
And we have to do that pull sometimes. You're like, okay, you went a bit, and it's such a like it feels like stopping a like fight, like a relationship fight. It just feels like you're for me, I felt it like that, like I make peace again, like I'm in a fight that I'm not even admitting because I'm disappointed that I'm not keeping my word.
Yes.
So then I'm like, whatever, you don't say what you do. Like, you know, it's a silent thing. And I
feel like you get to the point as well when it comes to like
so true.
Not upholding the promises or keeping your word with yourself. It gets to the point where you stop even suggesting something for yourself because you don't respect yourself enough to even follow through with any of it. And it's like the only way I think I get that back is by doing a fast or doing something that I just don't
want to do. A fast really helps, I agree.
Yeah, it's just because it's like, it's everyone, especially in the culture that we live, everything's so accessible. We want to eat food. Like 24 hours is hard for anyone, you know? Like I've done a bit longer before, but like 24 hours is generally still hard. Like, you know.
It's hard, but it's enough for it to be a good first step for people.
Yes.
And it's also interesting, too, I feel like disconnect the idea. Even with training, you must feel that, but I feel like training is a daily reminder of that, of like your body can go much farther than you think, and that your ego self, because like sometimes people is like 2 p.m. and they're having had lunch and they're losing their shit and actually can't function, and when you do a fast, you're like, I actually have so much more power than I think. And I think I was listening to one of the magicians, because I was listening to one of those crazy magicians that do these insane things. I think Jay Shetty interviewed him. He did like, I don't know how many days fasting, like months. He went crazy. He almost died. You probably, do you know who I'm speaking about?
No.
He's like this crazy guy, and then he puts like a knife. Anyways.
Oh, actually, yeah, David Blaine.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, David Blaine, yeah, he puts a knife down his throat, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was him that Jay Shetty was interviewing, and he was speaking about that when it comes to like just the getting back. And I don't know if that's what you're trying to do at the beginning of the year when you do all these crazy like challenges, but it's kind of like just reminding myself, or like reteaching myself that everything that my mind says about my body's capabilities and stuff, a lot of the time is not true. And my body is capable of so much more, and like you're able, and I think it's just kind of like disproving yourself, disproving the bad voice, and giving arguments to the other one. Like, no, you actually do have control. After you've been weeks of telling yourself like you cannot even control what you eat, you're not even waking up at the time you said you were gonna wake up. Like,
yes, it's almost like I love
sick.
That. I think Matthew McConaughey spoke about this, but it's like, we may not have been the author of, or we may not have wrote the first few chapters of our book, but we are the creators of the next chapters. Like, we have the right to write the next chapters, and it's up to us to write what's next. And we can live in these stories that were created for almost not even from us, but perception of our reality that we chose to believe, and we're living that. Or it's up to us to just recreate the story altogether and write the next chapters. Like, it's always up to us.
That's beautiful, and that's
right?
true.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful way of closing it. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's gonna be the move now. And you did it so theatrically as well. Thank you so much for this.
Of course.
This was sick.
Yes, love your brain. I love your brain.
Thank you, same. Thank you, guys. À bientôt. Au revoir. I didn't say it last time.
Arigato gozaimasu.
À bientôt. How's your French? À bientôt.
Merci.
À bientôt.
À bientôt.
À bientôt.
À bientôt.